story. The needle went through the wrong side of the fabric, and Amara didn't even stop to fix it. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her half-unpacked studio apartment in Mapogu, surrounded by bolts of Ankara and silk organza she couldn't afford to waste, and she kept sewing. Her hands moved like they were trying to outrun something. The silence, the debt, the WhatsApp messages from her mother she hadn't answered in 4 days. Outside, Seoul hummed with its usual indifference. A bus exhaled at the corner. A child laughed somewhere 3 floors below, and Amara's hands kept moving, even when her eyes blurred. She had flown from Lagos to Seoul with a collection, a vision, and 48 months of savings. She had left 8 months later with 2 suitcases, a lease she couldn't renew, and a business dissolved by a partner she had trusted with everything, including the password to her business account. The lawsuit was still open. The bank was patient in the particular way that banks were patient, with numbers and deadlines and no memory of who you used to be. She wasn't crying. She had decided not to cry until she finished this commission. 1 dress, 1 client, 1 payment that would cover February rent. Then, maybe, she could afford to fall apart. It was almost midnight when she ran out of thread. She didn't have a car. She didn't know the neighborhood well enough to predict which convenience stores carried sewing supplies. She pulled on her coat over her studio clothes, paint-stained sweatpants and a cropped sweater that had long stopped being presentable, and went out into the cold. The alley behind her building connected to a small commercial strip that stayed alive past 11, a Pojang matcha with orange tarp, a 24-hour pharmacy, and at the end, wedged between a dry cleaner and a shuttered music school, a restaurant with its lights still on. Bag Jihoon Sigdang, Park Jihoon's restaurant, handwritten on a wooden sign that hadn't been refinished in years. She wasn't going in for food. She was going in because the light was warm and she could see, through the fogged glass, that someone was still awake inside, and there was something reassuring about that. Another person conscious in the middle of the night. Another person not sleeping. The bell above the door was too loud for the hour. The man behind the counter looked up from where he was crouched beside the stove, and for a moment, neither of them moved. He was younger than she'd expected, late 20s, maybe 30, with flour dusted along his forearm and a kitchen towel thrown over one shoulder. His face held the particular exhaustion of someone who had been awake too long, not because they couldn't sleep, but because sleeping felt like surrender. "Josong Habnida," she said, one of 20 phrases she had memorized. "I'm sorry. Do you speak English?" He stood. "A little." His voice was careful, like he was checking the weight of each word before he set it down. "We are closed." "I know." She held up the spool she had grabbed from a basket near the door. White thread, not a perfect match, but close enough. "Can I buy this? I saw it through the window. I'm desperate." He looked at the thread. He looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity exactly, more like recognition. "How much will you pay for thread?" he said. "Whatever you want." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sit down. I will make you something to eat." "I don't need—" "You look like you haven't eaten," he said, and turned back to the stove before she could argue. She almost left. She stood there for a full 4 seconds weighing the social geometry of it. A strange man, a strange country, midnight, the commission she needed to finish. But the smell of whatever was on the stove was extraordinary, and her stomach turned over like a dog recognizing its name, and she sat down at the counter. His name was Park Jihoon. She learned this because it was on the sign, and also because he told her when she asked, setting down a bowl of doenjang jjigae with the careful precision of someone placing something valuable. "My father's restaurant," he said. "He died in October. I am reopening it." "I'm sorry about your father," she said. He nodded once. "You are the Nigerian woman, 3rd floor." She blinked. "You know me." "My neighbor, Mrs. Yoon, she talks." A brief, contained smile. "She says there is a Nigerian fashion designer who sews until 3 in the morning and the machine sounds like a very determined insect." Amara laughed. It surprised her. The laugh. And how much she needed it. "That's fair." "Why are you sewing at midnight? Why are you cooking at midnight?" He considered this. Then he nodded slowly, as if she had made a point that satisfied him, and sat down across the counter with his own bowl. They ate in silence for a while, and the silence was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who had both forgotten what it felt like to sit still with someone who wasn't asking them to explain themselves. She came back 3 nights later, not for Thread. She told herself she was coming for Thread. He had japchae waiting. He didn't say anything about it, just set it in front of her when she sat down, like it was a given, like she had a standing reservation in a restaurant that wasn't yet officially open. You tested the menu on me, she realized. You are the only customer I have right now. That's not true. I saw 2 people in here yesterday. They were my cousins, he said. They don't count. They only came because they felt sorry for me. She looked at him. He looked at the counter. Then something broke open in his face. Just for a second, just a crack. And he said, "My father had this restaurant for 31 years. Every person in this neighborhood knows it." When he died, everyone said, "Keep it going, Jihoon. Honor him, keep it going." He paused. "But I had my own restaurant, in Itaewon, modern Korean. We were doing well. I closed it to come back here, and now I am not sure if I closed it for him or for me. I am not sure if I know how to cook the way he cooked. I practice every night. I am not there yet." "The jigai was perfect," Amara said. "My father's was better." "You didn't cook it for me. You cooked it for him. That's different." He looked at her, and she felt the look land somewhere specific, not invasive, just precise, like he was noting coordinates. She told him about Lagos, about the collection she had spent 4 years building, the Ankara silk hybrid line that was supposed to be her breakthrough, her name on international racks, her proof. About Damalola, her business partner and oldest friend, who had emptied the account in March and was now, according to mutual contacts, in London with a new company and a new name, and the kind of audacity that only made sense if you had never once believed consequences applied to you. "I don't understand," Jihoon said. "She took everything." "Everything liquid. The physical inventory I still have. The equipment I sold to pay the lawyer." She turned her bowl in her hands. "The worst part is I saw the signs. I saw them and I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself she was my friend and friends didn't do this. I chose the story I wanted over the one that was true." "I did the same thing," he said quietly. "With my restaurant. My chef told me the neighborhood was changing too fast, that we needed to move slower. I thought he didn't believe in the vision." He shook his head. He was right. We expanded too fast, lost the regulars before the new ones came. "Did you have to close?" "I chose to close, to come here." He was quiet. "I still don't know if it was the right choice." "Does it feel right?" He thought about it seriously. The way she was learning, he thought about everything. "It feels necessary," he said finally. Right and necessary are not always the same thing. She thought about that for the rest of the week. She started coming every night. It was not a decision she made. It accumulated, the way habits do, one night at a time until skipping felt like the thing that required justification. He would cook. She would eat and tell him what she thought, which she had learned mattered to him. Not flattery, but honest assessment, the way she assessed fabric. He would ask questions about her work and listen to the answers with the full body attention of someone to whom listening was also a form of craft. He came to her studio once because she asked him to look at a piece she was uncertain about, a jacket in deep burgundy kente with structured shoulders and a Korean-style high collar. She wanted a second opinion from someone who didn't know fashion, someone who would respond to the thing itself rather than to whether it was correct. He stood in front of it for a long time. The studio was small and close and smelled of fabric, and the particular tension of creative work stalled midway. He walked around the dress form slowly, the way he walked around a dish he was evaluating. "It looks like an argument," he said. "What?" "Between two things that are both right. The kente is saying one thing and the collar is saying another." He tilted his head. "But I don't think they are arguing. I think they are negotiating." She stared at him. "That is exactly what I want it to do." "Then it's working." "I wasn't sure." "Sometimes you can't see your own work clearly when you're too close to it," he said. "You need someone to stand outside." She looked at him, really looked, and felt something shift below the surface of herself, something she had been careful not to move. It was raining the night he told her about his father. Not a dramatic rain, the fine, persistent soul rain that turned the streets into mirrors. They were sitting at the counter again, later than usual, and he had been quiet in a different way than normal. Not peaceful, waited. He taught me every dish in this restaurant, Jihoon said. Every one. I learned in this kitchen, right here, from the time I was 9. And then I left to do my own thing, and I was so sure that my way was better, more modern, more exciting. He stopped. He never said he was disappointed. He came to eat at my restaurant. He said it was good, but I saw his face when he tasted my fusion dishes. This very careful look, like he was trying to be proud and honest at the same time. Maybe he was both. Maybe. He looked at the stove. I never asked him which one won. He came, though, Amara said. He came to your restaurant in a different neighborhood and ate your food. He showed up. That's the answer. Jihoon didn't respond for a moment. She watched his jaw work through something. I'm not fixed, he said suddenly. I want you to know that. I am. I have good days, and then I have days where I don't know why I opened this place or what I am trying to prove. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I think you should know that before. He stopped. Before what? He looked at her directly. Before I tell you that I look forward to you coming here more than anything else that happens to me in a day. The honesty of it went straight through her. I'm not fixed either, she said. I wake up some mornings and the first thing I feel is shame. That I let it happen. That I trusted wrong. That I'm 31 and starting over in a country where I don't speak the language fluently, and I don't know how long my money will last, or whether the commission work will be enough, or whether I made the right choice coming here. She held his gaze. I don't have a tidy ending. I don't know how the story comes out. Neither do I, he said. Is that okay with you? He reached across the counter, not dramatically, not like a scene. Just reached and covered her hand with his and said, I think the only thing I know for certain right now is you. She turned her hand over and held his, and outside the rain continued its patient work on the city, and neither of them tried to say more than that. What followed was not a love story with clean beats. It was messier and more real, the way actual things are. There were nights Amara's anxiety swelled so large it had its own weather system, and she would sit in his kitchen not talking, just being near him while he worked, and he would not try to fix it, would not offer solutions or silver linings, would simply cook and fill the space with the sounds of someone present. There were nights Jihoon woke at 2 a.m. and couldn't locate the feeling that this was worth it, the grief too blunt, the uncertainty too heavy, and he would text her a single line, you awake, and she would be, because she always seemed to be, and they would talk until the feeling passed or until he fell asleep mid-sentence and she sat smiling at her screen in the dark. He learned to say Oya the way she used it. She learned to read his silences, the productive one, the grieving one, the one that meant he'd burned something and hadn't admitted it yet. The commission she finished that first week led to another, and then a feature in a Korean fashion blog covering diaspora designers in Seoul, and then a DM from a stylist who had seen the burgundy kente jacket at a showcase and wanted to talk. It was not recovery, not yet. It was the first clear inches of a long road, and she knew the difference, and she was learning to be okay with that. The restaurant opened officially on a Saturday in March. Small, deliberate, 10 tables, handwritten menus, her idea. People will think it's charming, she said, because it is. Jihoon had looked skeptical and then printed the menus by hand himself, one by one, which she found quietly devastating. Every table filled by 7. By 8, people were waiting outside on the sidewalk in the cold, and Amara watched from the doorway as Jihoon moved through the restaurant with the focused grace of someone who had finally found the right frequency. Not his father's frequency, not his Itaewon restaurant's frequency, but something that was both and neither and entirely his own. She had told him that morning, standing in the kitchen while he prepped, her coffee growing cold on the counter. You're not your father's restaurant. You're not your old restaurant. You're something that comes after both of them. That's allowed. He had looked at her for a long moment with flour on his hands, and that particular careful expression she had come to know as the one he wore when something landed true. You should say that to yourself too, he said. I know, she said. I'm working on it. She stood in the doorway of his full restaurant, watching him laugh at something a customer said, watching him be not healed, not whole in the way the world counted wholeness, but present and alive and building something real out of what was left. And she felt it again. That feeling. Not rescue, not arrival. Something quieter and more durable. The feeling of being seen while still becoming. She had met him at the wrong time. Her business was rubble. His grief was fresh. Neither of them was whole. The world would have said, wait. Fix yourself first. Come back when you have something better to offer. But the world, she was learning, often confused completion with readiness. And readiness, she was also learning, was not something you reached before you began. It was something you grew, slowly, in the company of someone who was growing too, at a different rate, in an adjacent direction, choosing each other in the middle of the mess, not at the end of it. That, she thought, watching him, that was its own kind of wholeness, not yet fixed. Still here, that's not yet but still saw. Your full AfroK Seoul story script at 3,000 plus words. Action first opening, third person POV, no headings, heavy escalation through emotional layering, and rich first person dialogue throughout. Let me know if you'd like any scenes deepened, dialogue expanded, or the pacing adjusted.